He promised you he would heal you, he will fulfill it. If he promised you that he was going to make a way out of no way, he will fulfill it. If he promised you that he will be with you even until the end of the earth, there will not be a day that he will not be with you. The truth is, you're in a waiting season, not a stuck season.
At Long Branch, we are saving souls and solving problems.
Because it's time to celebrate. Look at somebody and tell them it's time to celebrate.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in on today. We just finished our Bible study just 30 minutes ago, and I asked that you jump right back on, and you did, and I want to thank each one of you for doing so. Today, we're going to discuss something that is so important in our community. July was entitled BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month, which was previously known as National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And we're just so happy to be able to bring this up. And I know July has already passed, but we're still in early August, and we thought it necessary to talk about this such important topic. Something that is in all of our families, is in our community, dealing with and making sure that we are in the best health that we can be in. And that's not just spiritual health and physical health, but also mental health. I'm so grateful to have with us on today one who is very familiar with us here at Long Branch. She's our community engagement specialist, always bringing wonderful topics, subject matters, and also making sure that we are informed with things in our community. So I want to welcome Ms. Rhonda Rollins to our platform on today. So Ms. Rollins, thank you so much for bringing this issue up and making sure that it was something that we talked about here at Long Branch.
Yes, thank you so much, Pastor Dogan, for always being willing to leave a space in Bible study for these important conversations. And I think it's really wonderful that we didn't just keep it to the month of July, that we recognize that mental health is a topic that needs to be discussed year round. And so I'm really, really excited to welcome Dr. Frank Clark with us today. Dr. Frank Clark is a board-certified adult psychiatrist. He's also a poet and an author of several children's books as well. And this is a topic, of course, that he is extremely passionate about. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Clark to the conversation as well.
Well, thank you both, Pastor Dogan and Ms. Rollins. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and I look forward to the fellowship this evening.
Awesome. Dr. Clark, did I miss anything? Can you introduce yourself to our Long Branch family?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Dr. Frank Clark. I am based in Greenville or Simpsonville, South Carolina. I'm a poet, a father, a husband, a brother, a friend. Those are my self-truths. Also, most importantly, a man of faith. And I really enjoy spreading positivity in the community, and especially with our youth. And I enjoy what I do as an adult psychiatrist, and I'm really blessed to be a part of this time with you all tonight, and I look forward to a fruitful conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, I know that historically, which is why I think it's so important we're having this conversation. Historically, mental health, there's a stigma around it. There's a stigma around talking about it. There's a stigma around saying that you are suffering or living with a certain mental health illness. But I think it seems lately that might be changing a little bit. The tide is sort of changing where people are feeling a little bit more comfortable saying that they're going to therapy or, asking for help. Do you find that to be true?
I do find that to be true. I still think we have a long way to go, even though we have made progress, especially when it comes to communities of color. I am seeing the progress, but I would like to see more progress. And so, for example, when I think about the clinic where I see a lot of patients, I probably see more Black women than I do Black men. And I still feel like that needs to change, but the tide is turning, and we're moving towards the positive. But I think we could be doing a better job. But overall,
Mhm.
I am happy with the shift because maybe even a couple of years ago or decades ago, we didn't talk about that in our community. I think COVID, the pandemic, really illuminated the disparities that we already knew were in existence. But I think, the pandemic took a toll on all of us in many ways. And so maybe my therapist always talks about looking for the silver lining. So maybe the silver lining of the pandemic was that more people started to reach out for help. And that's always a good thing.
I love it. And I love what you just said. It's important to know that even someone like you goes to therapy. So I think the more we talk about it, the more common it'll become. Because I think what we don't want is people to be suffering in silence because they feel ashamed about what they're going through.
Absolutely. My story is a story of some adversity, which I think we all know that story because all of us have had adversity in our lives. And I think I wish that I would have probably sought help probably in my childhood, but I was diagnosed with clinical depression when I was in medical school, and and my symptoms have been in remission now for over a decade. But I still think it is important to do therapy. I used to take medications as well, but I figure, if I'm going to take care of the people who are coming for care, I got to be able to take care of myself first, and that's probably the most important
Mm,
thing that I can do as a human being, but also as a physician.
wow. And you bring up some good points about the fact that you see more women than men. And it's been documented that women, sometimes when they go in for medical help, mental health help, they're not taken as seriously as particularly Black women as white women are. So, but also Black men or men in general, really, when they go in for help, sometimes it's brushed off. And that is widespread. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely, I appreciate you bringing up that point. So for me, it goes back to the importance of cultural humility, and it also speaks to the importance of having a more culturally and diverse workforce. And so when I think about if you were to look across the nation, as a black psychiatrist, I make up 2% of the psychiatric workforce. I believe if you look at black social workers, they make up black psychologists, I think it's 4%. And I believe social workers who identify as black or African American, 11% or
Mm,
more. So we only make up 13% of the population, and there's a dearth of us as it relates to the psychiatric workforce. And I believe that has to change. We know that when our workforce is diverse, we are
mm,
able to better attend to the needs of our communities. Now, and let me be clear too. I don't want people walking away saying that, well, you have to, if you're black or Latinx or Alaskan Native American Indian, that you have to see somebody that looks like you, um, because unfortunately there's just not that many of us. But I do think it is important when we look at the studies with racial concordance that having someone who looks like you or from a similar cultural background, that can lead to better health outcomes because
mhm,
there is a trust that is developed. But I still see this in my practice, where I will have patients that I see, black men and women who have experienced discrimination in the healthcare system, and my goal is to do a lot of listening and not a lot of talking when they feel comfortable sharing that with me, and just to validate their experiences. And so we want to create a culture of trust, and the only way we can do that is one, have a diverse workforce; two, listen and affirm; and then three, how do we address their concerns?
And so, on a day to day basis, because we know, as people say, life can life, right? And stresses are faced on a daily basis, whether it be at work or at home. What are some things people can do? Because we're not saying that everyone needs to go to therapy, but what are some things people can do on a daily basis to make sure that they're taking care of their mental health, make sure that they keep their stress levels in check? What are some little maintenance things that we can do?
Yeah, I like how you refer to it as maintenance. So I'm going to use kind of the car analogy, right? We all take our car in to get a tune-up, every 3,000, 6,000 miles. So we get the tires rotated, get the oil changed, whatever needs to be done. That's the same way we should treat our bodies. Our bodies as a temple. So I can tell you what works for me, but I can also tell you what I have heard from people that I have cared for or friends that implement these strategies. So prayer is big for me.
Mhm.
Meditation is big for me. Exercise. So if you wanted to look at what is the best antidepressant that we have that is not actually a medicine, it's exercise.
Mhm.
Exercise is key. And I think sometimes people get into this all or none with exercise. It's like, well, I have to, if I don't exercise 7 days a week, then I'm not making, a stride in my health. No, that's not true. Technically, the guidelines is recommended, I think, 150 minutes per week. And so you can break that apart. You don't have to do all 150 minutes one day, but getting some type of exercise is important. Walking is a form of exercise. Even walking 10 minutes a day can change your brain in a healthy way. Okay. Exposure to green spaces, get out, see nature, be with God. God is in nature, God is everywhere. So we know that can decrease blood pressure, decrease heart rate, decrease our stress hormones like cortisol. And so I would encourage that. Another big thing is sleep. I cannot emphasize that enough. A lot of, on average, Americans we're not getting a lot of sleep. Some of that is because we are inundated with a lot of things, social media, breaking news, so apps. It's hard to really detach from our technology, and which I think contributes to an anxious and depressed generation that we're seeing, especially in our children. I would also say that nutrition is important. Depending on what we eat, that's going to dictate how we feel.
Mhm.
So I was recently diagnosed with pre-diabetes. Now you may look at me and think, well, you look pretty healthy. I exercise 4 to 5 times a week. I sleep about 6 to 7 hours, but I have a family history of diabetes, and I've made some changes. I was already eating healthy, but with the help of our nutritionist, my wife and I, we see a nutritionist because she also has pre-diabetes. We've increased our protein intake, and so it's been great to learn about how increasing our protein is not only good for the mind but also good for the body. And so I can't emphasize that enough, that nutrition is very important. So sleep, physical activity, nutrition, prayer, meditation. The last thing I'll say is social connection. Okay, there's a documentary that I would recommend for all of our listeners. It's called The Blue Zones. If you have not seen it, it's on Netflix. And there's a researcher that goes out to the different communities across the globe, all the way from California to Okinawa, Japan, and he looks at these blue zones of what is contributing to the longevity of these communities. Some of these communities are affluent, some of these communities, what you would say, are more impoverished. But the key things that tie them all together is the social connection. the sense of belonging. And we need to be better about communing with one another.
Mhm.
We need to become less of a phone-based generation and more of getting back to our roots of fellowship. Even we know that from biblical days that Jesus sat with his disciples, everybody communed. We need to be breaking bread and doing more things with people because that's going to be one of the key drivers of longevity.
Wow, so true. And I think because we are in such a technical world right now and people rely on technology, or I can sit home and watch it on, church on TV, that we have fallen back a little bit with that, especially after COVID. But I can say all of the things that you said, because I am a person who I deal with anxiety, and that ran in my family. But I have since, over the last 2 months, started a program at the YMCA. And I think one thing leads to another. Like the more I'm working out, I can feel it in my body, not just my physical health, but my mental health feels a lot better. My blood pressure numbers have gone down. And also, when you are taking care of your body in that way, the physical, you want to eat better because you want to you want to feel better on all different levels. And so I definitely agree with you on those four things. I love it: exercise, sleep, nutrition, social connections. You find some people who are in business who say that sleep is for losers, but it's so true, because doesn't our body, don't we regenerate cells as we're sleeping? So it is really, really important. And I have to tell myself that all the time too, as I'm up at 11:30 at night and have to wake up at 7. It's just not a
Yeah, the
good.
body, no, it's not. The body needs to recover. The body needs to recover. We need our rest. And, you don't necessarily have to get the 8 hours. Some people are not 8 hour sleepers. I'm a 6 to 7 hour sleeper. Anything below that, I do not function well.
Mm,
And, our bodies were not made to, our bodies run on electricity, if we think about that.
mm,
So at some point, that circuit is going to get shortened if we're
mhm.
not taking care of ourselves.
Right.
And, sleep deprivation, I can tell, the nights and I sleep fairly well, but, we all have our nights where you're just kind of restless or you're thinking about the next day. If I have a day or a night where I'm not sleeping well, that can impact the next day, and you're not as mentally sharp, you're not as
Mm,
physically sharp, and you might be more irritable than usual.
mhm.
Sleep deprivation, people can have seizures. It's not good for blood sugars. Okay. So there's sleep is this, I can't emphasize it enough. If I had to, if I wanted audience members to walk away with one thing tonight, it would be please get enough sleep.
Mm,
Please get enough
mhm.
sleep and rest your body.
Right, and we've talked about the differences in between how men are treated and how women are treated in the medical system. What can we do to help each other? There are married couples, out there. What can women do to help the men in their lives, with their stress levels, and vice versa? What can we do to come together and help each other to make mental health, not so much a stigma anymore, or to help our stress levels?
Great question. I think the first thing is to validate one another and realize that, some days one person is going to be on the struggle bus, other days the other person might be on the struggle bus, and then there's some
Mm,
days both of you are on the struggle bus. My wife and I can attest to that.
mm,
And so validating one another, but also showing each other grace.
mm.
I think we are still in a society where we get into these gender roles.
Mhm.
And the man is supposed to be this certain way, and the woman is supposed to be this certain way. I don't subscribe to the gender roles, and maybe some people may disagree with that, but to me, it's a partnership, and so the partnership allows one another to, yes, we're holding one another accountable, but we are doing this together. And men, it is for men who are listening, I would say it is okay to cry, it is okay to be vulnerable, it is okay to express yourself. But in order for us to do that, we have to have a safe space.
Mm,
Same thing for women. It is okay to cry, it is okay to be vulnerable, but women have to have a safe space. When there's no psychological safety, then I'm going to pick on men for a second, is a lot of times people say, oh, this he doesn't open up, he won't say anything. There could be a lot of reasons for that. maybe he doesn't feel like he has a safe space. And so, everybody is going to cope differently with things. And so both men and women, we need our safe spaces to just be. And once the partners, the couples, it's, I think, making a covenant, right? You make a covenant with one another and say, like, we're going to talk. We're going to talk about how you're doing. We're going to talk about how I'm doing. You can do your own individual counseling, but you could also do couples counseling. But I think that safe space is paramount in how the needle can be moved forward, because what we know, and I've seen this, in my practice, when there's not a safe space, people retreat, they isolate, and they shut down. And then that just is, it's like a huge snowball effect. And then the person is left wondering, I don't understand why why he or she is not talking to me. And it's nobody's fault, right? It's not intentional by any means. But again, we all are going to present differently in terms of depression and anxiety symptoms. We have to think about how substances influence how we, may be dealing with things. So, if that person is picking up a drink of alcohol, we don't want to shame them for that or blame them. We want to kind of say, hey, I've noticed that, instead of having one drink a week, now you're having 2 or 3. I just want to make sure everything is okay. I want to take this time for listening, time for receptive listening. And I just want you to know I'm here for you if you want to talk about things. It's just an observation, right? That's better than saying, like, it's been 3 drinks now and stuff. Everything, you need to stop. You need to put the alcohol down. That person's going to shut down. So I think we just need to come with a non-judgmental approach for both parties, and be able to have real talk, real conversations. And when we do that, I think we can move mountains in not only relationships, but also individually.
Awesome. And I also want to allow time for Pastor Dogan. I see he's letting me anchor the interview here, because one thing that is really wonderful as you talk about nutrition and things like that, we at Long Branch, under Pastor Dogan's leadership, he is a healthy pastor. And so he really encourages us to be healthy as well, and watch the way we're eating and that type of thing. So I just want to give kudos to Pastor Dogan for that, and also to just give him an opportunity if he has any questions or comments.
Yeah, well, Ms. Rollins, I didn't butt in because you're doing such a great job. And as Dr. Clark was talking, I thought about some of the initiatives that we have here at Lone Branch with Faith, Fitness, and Fellowship. That's coming up, our 100 Days of Faith, Fitness, and Fellowship, where we'll take just 100 days out of the year between now and the holidays to really focus in on a lot of the aspects that you've talked about. So with our nutrition, with food, with exercise, with fitness, but also that social isolation that we need to, dismantle and make sure that we have. You're a man of faith. You've been speaking community wide and have, also dropped some nuggets on what we can do here as a congregation. But do you have any suggestions on how the faith community can really wrap around? I think about mental health first aid, those proactive things that we could have to educate our congregation to help people even in crisis, or to even figure out if it is a crisis, because sometimes mental health is criminalized instead of looking at it as a health issue. So what are just things that you feel the faith community, the power of the pulpit, the power of our fellowship and networks that we can do to help promote or advocate for behavioral and mental health?
Thank you for that question, Pastor Dogan. I would say keep doing what you're doing, because whatever you're doing is working. The opportunity to have platforms like this to discuss issues around mental health. Unfortunately, there are still faith communities across the country that stigmatize people with mental health conditions, including substance use disorders. So, when you're talking about the initiatives with family and fitness and nutrition, that those are things that I think all churches, all faith communities should be doing. Mental health first aid is great. I'm a huge proponent of mental health first aid, and then I think it's this also continuing to foster connections with the mental health professionals in the community. You know, it's important to. I think every pastor should know somebody who's a psychiatric provider, whether that be a social worker, whether that be a psychiatric nurse, a nurse practitioner, a physician, somebody in the, and it's just like I feel like all psychiatric providers should have allies in the faith community, just the same, vice versa. And so I think it's this continuing to, foster those connections in the community and having those resources. I also think that Mental Health of America in Greenville County is a huge resource. NAMI, just having those resources are important. I think also just the resources when we look at about food insecurity and housing insecurity, because we know that those can contribute to poor mental health outcomes for our communities, and making sure people know where they can go if they are experiencing those social determinants of health, which we know are rampant in the state of South Carolina. And also, knowing when to refer to, resources, whether it be Prisma or other organizations. And I know I work for Prisma, so I'm saying Prisma, but, there's other organizations that, can definitely serve the community. We're here to serve the community. And so we want to be that light and beacons of hope for the communities that we serve. Yeah. And as well as we can do that with faith communities, that's a great thing.
Yeah. Two other things really quick. One, we've been talking about mental health and more, I guess, from an adult standpoint. Do you have anything that you can say to our young people, our teenagers, maybe even our middle school students, because they go through a lot of transitions? So that's one part of it. And then while you're talking to young people, workforce development and workforce, you mentioned earlier that it's only 2% of those in psychiatric care that are African Americans, 4% when it goes to other disciplines, but then 11% with social workers and all. So even as a career opportunity and pathway. So one, a word to our young people, but then two, as they're thinking of their careers, them considering this as a path as well.
No, thank you for those questions. So to address the first question, what would I say to the youth? Embrace who you are, be your true self. Don't be afraid to just be. I think a lot of times, growing up and going through all the transitions that you're going through, it can be hard to stay true to who you are, and just developing that sense of self. I would encourage our youth to really detach from technology as much as possible. I'm not saying that technology doesn't have its positives, because it does, but be mindful of how much time you are spending on social media. I am listening to a book on Audible right now called The Anxious Generation. And the author talks about how there's been a rewiring of our youth's brain and development because of the technological advances in social media. So I don't think anything is all good or bad. I try not to get into that all or none thinking. So there's definitely some gray area there, but please just try to detach as much as possible and just be in conversation with people, form those social connections, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with saying that you're depressed. There's nothing wrong with saying that you're anxious. We are human beings and we were made to have feelings. That doesn't mean that if you are depressed, it doesn't mean that you have to take medicines. There's therapy, there's other forms of treatment, but don't suffer in silence. We are losing so many youth right now to suicide, especially as it relates to Black youth. And the pandemic didn't make that any better. So I just would encourage all of our youth to stay true to who you are, detach, get enough sleep, Do the things that bring you joy and meaning, and surround yourself around people that care about you. And that would be my address to the youth. As it relates to your second question, workforce development, we need more people in mental health. It's We just do. Doesn't mean you have to be a psychiatrist like myself. You can be a mental health technician. You could be a pharmacist. You could be a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant. You could be a physical therapist. You could. Mental health is not going anywhere. I think what is it? Depression is the leading cause of disability. When we look at across all, when we look at globally, and so we need more people who are going to be advocates for our communities. And you have an opportunity to do that. And so I would encourage you to get some early exposure. If you're interested in mental health and you want to shadow someone, find someone that you can talk to in the mental health profession. It could be a psychologist, it could be a psychiatrist. It could be anyone that works with individuals, a social worker, a licensed professional counselor. Get to know your community. Volunteer at the homeless shelter. Volunteer at the soup kitchen, because I guarantee you, you're going to meet people with mental health conditions. The majority of our population who is experiencing homelessness has a mental health condition and a substance use disorder. I work at our local detention center. I see individuals who are in custody. I help address their mental health needs. The jail and prison system has become the new mental health hospital, unfortunately. So you could even look at being a correctional officer if you wanted to, or working in different environments. All that to say is, please consider a career in mental health. And always happy to talk with people about careers and moving forward. But that would be that was what I would encourage people to do.
Thank you. Ms. Rollins, would you like to end this segment?
I think that was so much information. I was taking notes over here. So thank you so much for joining us. I know Donovan Parks deals with our youth, and we may have some youth who might want to talk to you or shadow you or something like that one day. So I'm sure he'll get in touch with you if he does. But I just thank you so much. And I think what you said was we just really don't want people to suffer in silence, to know that there is help for them. So thank you for the conversation.
Thank you for the invitation. Again, I appreciated the fellowship, and I really appreciate what all you both are doing in our communities, and to make sure that people are living their best life.
Thank you. Well, Lone Branch and friends, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ms. Rollins. Thank you, Dr. Clark, for being with us today. Thank you, Lone Branch, for jumping back on and hearing this important information. Whatever you do, remember, I'm impact, you're impact, but we're better together. Go in peace and serve the Lord every day of your life.